To our first meeting of 2025, first meeting of Strategy and Resources Committee. Meeting, as always, is open to the public and is being webcast. There's nothing that is exempt today from public or press. We've not received any public questions or petitions for today's meeting. If I could just ask everyone to switch their phones to silent, which I will do now, that would be helpful. There's no fire test planned, as always, and if there is an emergency evacuation, do follow the staff and we'll go down to Tudor Square. I'll ask every member of the committee to introduce themselves now, followed by the officers in attendance. So my name is Tom Hunt. I'm the leader of the council and chair of the Strategy and Resources Policy Committee. And as always, I will start on my left.
Councillor Angela Ardencio, member for Broomhill and Charleville and chair of Adult Health and Social Care Policy Committee.
Councillor Douglas Johnson, chair of Housing and member for City Ward.
Councillor Zahira Naz, councillor for the Darnell Ward and chair of the Finance Committee.
Councillor Dawn Dale, Chair of Education, Children and Families and Councillor for Shire Green and Brightside.
Good afternoon, Abdul Qayyum, Councillor for Firth Park and Joint Chair of Licensing Committee.
Fran Belbin, Deputy Leader of the Council and Deputy Chair of the Committee.
Good afternoon, I'm Councillor Ben Miskell, Chair of Transport Regeneration and Climate Policy Committee.
Councillor Joe Otton, Chair of Waste and Street Scene.
Councillor Sheffield Mohammed Ecclesall Ward.
Councillor Curtis Crossland, Councillor for Bayton Ward and Chair of the Communities, Parks and Leisure Committee.
Martin Smith, Chair of Economic Development, Skills and Culture Committee and Councillor for Durham Totley.
Hello, my name's Diane Hurst. I'm an elected member for Richmond Ward.
Lovely, thank you very much, everybody. So I'll now ask the officers who are here to just introduce themselves as well, starting again on my left.
David Hollis, General Counsel.
Afternoon, James Henderson, Director of Policy and Democratic Engagement.
Deborah Smith, Director of Communications.
Hi everyone, Claire Taylor, Chief Operating Officer.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ajman Ali, Executive Director of Neighbourhood Services.
Afternoon, Chris Ellison, Interim Director of Housing.
Craig Rogerson, Democratic Services.
Philip Gregory, Director of Finance and Commercial Services.
Kate Martin, Exec Director, City Futures.
Okay, thank you very much. And Kate Joseph, Chief Executive, is coming to join us very shortly. So, as I say, no apologies received. I did just want to take this opportunity to say that this is the first meeting since we've been able to congratulate Councillor Mohammed on his elevation to the House of Lords, which came just before Christmas. So, on behalf of all of us, many congratulations, Shafak. Yeah, indeed. Really great news, and we'll look forward to seeing you represent Sheffield in the chamber. So, any items of interest that anyone wants to declare about any of the items on today's agenda? No. Okay, thank you. So, the minutes of previous meetings are on page 11 in the pack. Our members happy to approve as a correct record those minutes, which are of the meeting that we held on the 11th of December 2024. See nods, thank you very much. As I mentioned, we've received no public questions, statements or petitions today, or no member questions, which takes us to item number 7, which as always is a report to acknowledge the contribution over many years of staff of this council who are retiring, and an opportunity for us to thank them. And I would like to get into more of the habit of naming those officers who have put in many years of service to this council. So, Andrea Birch, Sarah Hazelhurst, Dorothy Drumfield, Helen Elshaw, Anne Frost, Richard Gilson, Victor Harrison, Paul Hayes and Annette Angel. On behalf of this committee, we'd like to say thank you to you all for your service and dedication to the council. There are 9 members of staff who I've just mentioned, and together they have provided this council with 343 years of service, an average of 38 years each. So that is quite something, and I'm sure you'll all join me in saying thank you to those staff who are retiring, and we wish them a very happy and long retirement. Right, item number 8 is our work programme, and with that, let me hand over to Craig.
Thank you, Chair. Members have the latest version of the work programme in their pack. Since the last meeting, there's been a number of changes. They're set out on page 28. In particular, there's 4 new items. There's a petition referred from Council, which we alluded to at the last meeting, which is going to have a response submitted in March. And then I've added in the 3 follow-up items that you were requested at the last meeting, with no dates confirmed for those at this stage. There are 2 amended items. They're also set out on page 28. The medium-term financial strategy item is now proposed to come to the next meeting in February, and the annual equality report is suggested for the March meeting instead of February. And then just to note, Chair, that there are no cross-cutting items for you to consider on this occasion.
Thank you very much, Craig. Any questions for Craig? Any comments, feedback about the work programme? All good. Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Craig. So we will approve the work programme as it is set out, which then takes us to item number 9, the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan and HRA Budget 25-26, and to give us an overview of the report and to open up the conversation around this, we've got Ajman and Chris. So I'll hand straight over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. So I'm going to talk about the Housing Revenue Account Business Plan, but in doing so, I'll also talk about some of the commitments that we're making over the next 12 months, as well as some of the improvements in the transformation programme that's been taking place within the housing service, and touching on some of the improvements that we've been making in terms of performance as well. So try and capture all of that within this discussion, so we'll spend a bit of time doing that. So this report sets out the 25-26 Housing Revenue Account Business Plan, which, as you know, is reviewed each year and updated. It sets the budget and the charges for the year ahead, and to provide an updated 5-year plan and the 30-year affordability profile. The plan's included in the report as an Appendix A to this report, and there's a lot of detailed analysis in there around the current operating environment, some of the key commitments we are making to progress over the next 12 months, and an overview of revenue and capital spending over the next 5 years and the 30-year life of the plan. So it's fair to say that the housing service generates income which is spent on delivering repairs, capital improvements and tenant services to more than 38,000 council homes across the city. There are many financial and operational delivery pressures on the service, and ensuring that we have a business plan that remains sustainable and viable, whilst also meeting and maintaining some of that regulatory compliance and expectations, is really vital. So increased investment is really essential for ensuring repairs and capital improvements are delivered to maintain our customers' homes to a decent standard, as well as making sure that we comply with our regulatory responsibilities and some of the new emerging legislative challenges that are emerging over the horizon. The income mainly comes through dwelling rents, and our ability to set rents is very much determined by the rent standard, which sets a maximum amount that's capped around the September CPI level plus 1%. And we've recently been given the announcement that we can have a 5-year plan in terms of setting the rents. Ideally, we'd like that to be longer, but 5 years is what we've got at the moment. So what we're proposing as part of this report is that we increase dwelling and garage rents for 25-26 by 2.7%. And the increase in rents and service charges will generate just over £5 million of additional income, taking the total expected income for next year to £187 million. So by way of example, we'll use some of this income to be able to provide some additional investment in the repair service, to deal with overdue works, provide additional capacity to tackle damp and mould, provide fire safety, gas safety works, better estate improvements, electrical works and window safety in some of our high-rise blocks. These are very much some short-term measures to deal with some of those immediate issues and priorities, whilst for the longer term, our investment plan will be informed by good quality stock condition data, which are currently gathered in by surveying all of our properties, and we've got two main contractors as well as our own staff to be able to do that across the city. So that said, in addition to allocating additional resources to deal with the day-to-day responsive repairs, we'll also be investing £47 million in major capital works and around £67 million on our stock increase programme in the next financial year. So that's significant sums of investment that we're putting in. And over the longer term, over the next 5 years, we expect to invest a total of around £600 million on capital programme going forward. And this also includes provisions for Gleadless Valley regeneration. Investment that will not only contribute to improving council homes and building new ones, but contribute to growth, creating and safeguarding jobs, supporting apprenticeships, and bringing added value, and additional investment and transforming some of our estates and some of our neighbourhoods. The focus of the stock increase programme for up to 2029 will continue to be on acquiring new market homes, strategic acquisitions, and directly delivering some smaller number of housing sites which remain viable for us, and will continue to do that to meet needs in the city. And this is very much in line with the Housing Growth Delivery Plan, which this committee approved last month, if you'll remember. It's perhaps also worth noting that we'll see a net decrease in the number of council homes over the next 30 years, and expect to lose around 800 homes to Right to Buy over the next 12 months or so. And we've had a huge influx of applications recently following the autumn statement. Over the next year, we've made a number of commitments which are set out in the business plan, and that have been developed in consultation with our tenants, and I'd like to mention a few notable ones here. So, for example, we're doing quite a lot of work on reducing the number of empty properties and the time that it takes to let those, saving council tax costs as well as generating additional income. We're making more of our properties greener and energy efficient to help reduce costs for tenants and make sure that they reach that EPC C status. We'll be taking more enforcement action against those who cause nuisance and distress, antisocial behaviour or breach tenancy conditions. And our focus on making neighbourhoods and our housing estates more attractive and better managed. We work really hard to make customer experience better, easy for customers to contact us and provide a much better digital offer. And we'll create more opportunities for tenants to be involved in helping to shape some of our services. And above all, we'll make sure that we treat all our customers fairly and respectfully as they deserve. We're also delivering lots of efficiencies, improving performance and tenant satisfaction through our housing transformation programme, which is being progressed in phases. The current phase of the improvement programme has focused on 4 areas. Voids, which I've referred to already. I'm really pleased to say that we've almost reduced by 30% the number of empty properties since we started focusing our attention on this, bringing back into use lots of long-term empty properties and making £1 million savings in the budget. So that's a significant achievement over the last year. Repairs are a key priority for us. In 2023, we were well below our peers in the timeliness for responsive repairs. Now our in-year data shows a 25% increase in the timeliness for emergency repairs alongside an increase in non-emergency repairs performance. Overdue repairs are also coming down, and we'll continue to see further improvements following the allocation of additional contractor resource and capacity in recruiting more staff. We're focusing on building safety and asset management, and since April of this last year, we've commissioned and commenced stock condition surveys to support the development of a robust asset management strategy. It's really important that we have good quality data to be able to inform our spending plans going forward. We've changed the way that we do electrical checks, so we've commissioned contractors to move from a 10-year programme to a 5-year programme, so more frequency in terms of how we carry out those inspections. We've reviewed our window safety in high-rise blocks, and we've got a contractor who will be mobilised to carry out works in April of this year. We've also got a contractor to manage our identified repairs coming out of the fire risk assessments, and we've brought in specialist technical knowledge to help with the building safety and windows in high-rise, as I mentioned. And in March, we'll be bringing an interim asset management strategy to the Housing Policy Committee, which will again be informed by some of that stock condition data that we've been collecting. And fourthly, we've been making strides in tackling homelessness. We introduced a review of the homelessness service where we brought in external experts to help us look at that service, and they made some recommendations. We've got an implementation and improvement planning to deal with that, and already we're seeing improvements in terms of the reduction of number of people in bed and breakfast accommodation, which is having a knock-on impact in terms of cost to the council. So significant improvements there. We've reported performance to the Housing Policy Committee last month, and I just wanted to end by showing you this slide on tenant satisfaction. So hopefully you can see that. So these are, can you put that on please? Thank you. So what we do as part of the regulatory requirements, we measure tenant satisfaction across 12 different indicators. And what you will see from there, across all of those 12 satisfaction areas, we've seen improvements in our performance from previous year. Specifically, we've seen around 6% increase in overall satisfaction and an 8% increase in our approach to handling complaints. And based on recent publication of all the tenant satisfaction measures nationally, we are also performing above our peer group medians across all of these areas, except for communal areas. But you can see that we have over 7% increased satisfaction in this area as well. So there's a real impact as a consequence of the improvements that we're putting in place. But we're not complacent. There's a lot more to do. And we'll continue on that journey, but what this is demonstrating is that by working closely together collectively as a whole council and colleagues working together across the services, we're making some significant improvements, and the direction of travel is going in the right way. So, in summary, whilst there's been lots of pressures on the HRA, and you will see some of that in the latest media, there's more changes on the horizon and more pressures. What we are able to do today is present to you a balanced housing revenue account for this committee's approval. And despite those challenges, we've been able to commit significant resources, as I've outlined, to continue to invest in our residents' homes, as well as making a marked improvement in performance and customer satisfaction. And I commend this report to the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. That's really helpful to see the performance on the slide, and that upward trajectory is good to see. Chris, before I open it up, was there anything further you wanted to add at this stage? Okay, thank you very much. So far I've got 3 members who've indicated that they would like to speak. I've got Angela, Zahira, and then Douglas, and then we'll go a second round from there. Cal.
First of all, I want to say thank you for the report, and it's really clear and very easy to understand, which is really, I think, important. It's just, I just have a couple of questions, a few comments. First of all, I just wanted to say how grateful and how I've noticed how we're working differently as a one council, because I know that social care and housing are working very, very closely together. And particularly on adaptations, because whilst it's housing, some of the budget is in social care. And we had a meeting recently or a briefing recently about this. So I'm really grateful to both sets of staff for working really hard to work in synchronically together very well. I was just wondering, what are we doing in terms of skills and how are we linking with the skills bit of the council to create apprenticeships and training for those jobs that are so hard to find? Because in adaptations, for example, it's really difficult to find people who are qualified to install, you know, ramps and things. It's not everybody can do that. You have to have certain very specific skills. Another question I have is about the heating replacement program and whether we are planning to replace gas boilers with more environmentally friendly alternatives, because, you know, seeing our commitments to climate change reduction, crisis reduction, and similarly with the roofs and tower blocks roofs, and whether we are looking at having solar panel as a standard on all high rises, so that we can create some of the energy that is used by the blocks themselves. But I think the skill thing is really important, because we all know, even as private citizens, how difficult it is to find people to come and do jobs at your own house. Even when it's big jobs, it's really difficult, because there's not enough people who are skilled enough to carry out those tasks.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Naz, please.
Thank you for the report. I have a comment actually to make. I think the government recently announced changes to the right to buy scheme, reducing the maximum discount. Reducing this discount means that, you know, this allows us to keep more of our housing stock, but also 100% of the receipts will go back to the council, which is a positive step in the right direction. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that, make a comment around that. I think it's really positive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, please.
Thanks very much. Just as Chair of the Housing Committee, I just want to add a few comments. So again, as the others said, thanks for presenting that report. That presentation summarises the wide range of things that are going on in the housing service. And I've said often enough this year that housing is a really important public service. It's one that we should be proud of. We're a good council. We have a good service. And what's important about the housing revenue account is that this is essentially tenants' money. It's ring-fenced to separate off from the rest of the council finances. And the reason for that is essentially this is tenants' money being paid in, and all the huge range of services that Ajman has talked about being delivered by a large part of our workforce is for the benefit of those tenants. So it is about money being held on trust. And I want to say something about just building up the trust of tenants, as Ajman's very neatly summarised in the slide on screen. And I'm going to commend the people on the Housing Committee who've all contributed to all the work of the committee across the year, contributed to the contents of this business plan, and we have seen a growing trend in the satisfaction expressed by tenants. It's clearly not there yet. We're not going to pretend that everything is hunky-dory, but it is moving in the right direction. It's that reflection of the hard work that's been put in by all our staff, our committee, and our tenants themselves, and we've had more engaging discussions with some of our tenants groups. That's really positive. And it is important that we talk about the benefits of housing as a public service. I want to reflect on the fact that as this council has been part of the national movement of councils who are actually asserting the fact that we own, manage and deliver housing as a public service across the country. There are millions of council tenants, and we've been part of the movement expressing concerns to government now about the damage that's been done to the restrictions on funding and the impact that's had on our tenants in Sheffield and across the country over the last 10, 15 years. So there's some really good work there. I just want to finish off by expressing thanks again to all our workforce. And we have got some really good people out there working for us, delivering services to tenants day in, day out. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So a couple of questions and comments if you want to come back on them, and then I'll open it up to a second round of comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. I'll bring Chris in as well in that. In terms of apprenticeships, that's really important, and I'm really pleased that in the housing service in particular, in the repair service, we've got a significant number of apprentices that we take on a regular basis, and what we try and do is make sure that once their apprenticeship term is finished, is to make sure that we have provisions in there to retain those, because wouldn't it be a travesty if we spent 2 or 3 years training people and then we saw them walking out the door to somewhere else. So we really do try and do that. We also make sure that we work with our contractors to make sure that they, as part of that social value element of it, that they also provide training and apprenticeship opportunities for people to get into that construction sector. So that's definitely on our agenda. We continue to do that, and it's just not within housing services. We do that across many of the operations within the broad Neighbourhood Directorate as well. We've got private contractors that deliver the AIDS and Adaptations Programme, as well as our own people, and equally private contractors develop them for adults and social services. So as you say, Councillor Agency, we are working very closely with colleagues in adult services to make sure that we are joined up and getting the best outcomes for people that need to have those adaptations and can live in their properties for longer. There's nothing better than wanting to remain in your property for as long as you possibly can. In terms of the heating programme, our approach really is trying to have a fabric first approach, so making sure that obviously we deal with the fabric element of that and good insulation, good windows, draft exclusion, etc. We're not planning to put alternatives in place in terms of gas boiler replacements at the moment. So we continue to replace those. Clearly, at the moment, the jury's out in terms of what the best alternative might be, but clearly looking at air source, ground source opportunities, and as you say, solar power is a good thing to look at in terms of utilising roof spaces appropriately. And the team are working, as you know, on the retrofit plan for housing services, and that will come to committee for discussion in due course. So we're looking at all of those, perhaps not going as fast as we'd like to do, but there are also resource implications around that. If we were to try and get to complete net zero, there's going to be a huge cost implication, and we're working with the sector and colleagues to make sure that we can identify appropriate funding, including making sure that we're lobbying government appropriately as well for that. Is there anything else you want to add?
Probably just to extend the points that my colleagues made, which is not only are we having successful pathways for apprenticeships, but we're also looking where there are other material skill shortages in areas in housing. One of those being in our private sector rental scheme, because they have environmental health officers, and there are very few of those coming through. So we've engaged in a graduate scheme to skill those people up, and they have successfully completed that graduate scheme and stayed with us as employees as well. I think the external environment brings a lot of challenges to us in terms of skills and knowledge and particularly experience. So the continued changes around the green agenda and opportunities there, plus the ramping up around building safety, and you'll all be very familiar with the fire safety element of that, means there are significant shortages in that area, not only just to undertake the work, but actually the knowledge and skills to make those assessments. And whilst that's a sector that is skilling itself up, experience is still important. So not only are social housing providers like Sheffield City Council looking for those skills, but there are a whole series of other sectors, and we work very closely with South Yorkshire Fire and Rescue, who are also looking for the same set of skills from the same set of people with a similar set of experience. So it is a particular challenge in those areas. So that's why initiatives like that are important.
Great, thank you very much. So 5 members have indicated they would like to come in, and so I've got Councillor Smith, Councillor Coston, Councillor Belbin, Councillor Otton and Councillor Hurst. Is there anyone else who wants to come in which case I'm going to take those 5 and then come back to the panel. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just wondered if you could clarify one point for me. You mentioned quite rightly the environmental benefits of the improvement programme. Councillor Argentia did the same. But then there's a proposal to stop participation in the ISO environmental management standard audits. Could you just, to the non-expert, that doesn't quite tally. So could you just elaborate on that, please?
Thank you very much. Councillor Crossan, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. Council has previously publicly stated that it has an aim of reducing overdue housing repairs to zero by June this year, yet this report has no mention of that. In fact, it says that work on overdue housing repairs will drift into 2026. I'm just wondering if we are still on target to hit the June this year.
Thank you. Councillor Belbin, please.
Thanks. A not dissimilar question linked to the housing transformation work, which I think there's obviously been some massive improvements around that. And I think you cited in your introduction there, Ajman, the improvements around temporary accommodation, on turning around empty properties, etc. And it's really fantastic to see so much green on this slide in front of us. And I think most importantly, the fact that everything, all those measures are on an upward trajectory. I was reflecting, I think last time I looked in any detail at these kinds of figures, which was probably a year or so ago when I was on the Housing Committee. I think we had a discussion then around, this is obviously a journey and we were coming from quite a low base. So while the figures are going in the right direction, as the transformation programme carries on, presumably our ambition carries on as well, and we're looking to update those targets. I think last time I discussed them, a lot of our targets were actually on the same level as some of our peer councils or the median. So at what point do we expect to go, yes, we want to be at the same level or better than every other council out there? Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Austin, please.
Thanks. Yes, a question on the impact of the right to buy changes. I'm looking at 2.28 of the report and also page 25, and there are some earlier pages in the appendix pack. I'm slightly puzzled by the use of the phrase, and it's in scare quotes, 141 receipts for reinvestment. Right to buy sales continue to generate 141 receipts for reinvestment. I mean, I appreciate there was an attempt over 10 years ago now to say you could always build one for each one you sold, but it's never happened. And the discount's being reduced, but we've got a flurry of right to buy applications under the old discount. In future, there'll be a smaller discount. So, as the report says, we'll expect fewer applications in the future, but it's still a discount. And even if you retain 100%, which I'm, hope for clarification that we can retain 100% of the money coming in and to invest in stock increase, it's still a stock decrease policy, isn't it? We're still looking at a decline in the number of council houses due to right to buy. And I don't know if you can put any numbers on that in terms of how many we have to sell under right to buy in order to have enough money to build one more, what percentage replacement rate we can achieve using the receipts from right to buy, because that then puts a number on how serious a stock decrease policy right to buy is. Thank you. Yeah, if you could explain that, thank you.
Thank you. And then Councillor Hurst, please.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for the report. I've got a few questions. The first one is purely selfish. It's on behalf of a constituent who keeps asking me the questions out. I want you to be able to say it in public. I've got some residents in a low-rise block that were supposed to have new roofs 2.5 years ago when the contractors went bust. Luckily, they weren't caught up in that because, well, I don't know if it's lucky or not, but they were held back because there was a right to buy in the property. And I can see in the programme that the new roofing programme that they're supposed to be in is due to start in the first quarter of 25-26. So number one is, can you reassure me that that is still on track? And the next time they ring up, I can say, yeah, you've not got very long to wait now. Simply because of they've seen the energy effect, the energy savings for their neighbours on. So they want it for themselves. Number two, customer engagement. I can see they listen to what we say on there, but can you tell me something about, can you talk around how we're investing time and resources in engaging with tenants and residents and helping them to influence and to know what is happening on the estates and influence the way that the services are delivered in their neighbourhoods. We all know that Taras are struggling, but what are we doing to help bring that back? And the third one, I can't see on the satisfaction indicators up there, it's not that there might not be one, But you saved £1 million on voids. That's impressive. But what's the target time for turnaround from handing the keys in to having the property let? I know what it used to be, but what is it now? And what are we hoping to reduce it to? Thank you.
Great. Thank you all very much. So quite a wide-ranging set of points and questions for Ajman and Chris to come back on. So I'll hand back over to you, please. Thank you. Could you just stick the mic on? Sorry. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. With a voice like this, you're not very often asked to use a microphone. I'll pick up the ISO environmental one. It is, as what it says, one of those standards which requires a heavy investment in time and money, and we have been doing continuously over a period of time. A lot of it refers to the treatment of waste, rubbish, etc. And the view was that because we've been through that cycle on a number of occasions, that we felt that the policies and practices were sufficiently in place to have another form of audit on those, rather than go through the whole process of the accreditation again. So it was a value for money decision, effectively, based on what we felt we could, effective practices and assurances in place.
Okay, what I'm going to do, because there may well be other people who want to come back in if you ask any supplementaries, so do you want to answer the questions and come back if there's any follow-ups on that, rather than get stuck on one point? Thank you.
You go next, sorry.
Okay, we'll try and do a bit of a double act and picking some of these points up. So I think in terms of the repairs question, clearly we're working really hard. Some of the things I've mentioned to you in terms of getting that trajectory down, we're aiming to make sure we get to a level in terms of dealing with all of those overdue works by the summer of this year. That's the intention, to do that. Obviously, sometimes it's quite a dynamic situation and lots of things can have an impact on that, but that's the trajectory that we're aiming to do, and that's being very closely monitored by the officer group, as well as reporting that to the Housing Policy Committee, and we'll take corrective action if that trajectory is unlikely to not be met. We're also working with the regulator in relation to that, so they pay particular attention to it. The easiest question to answer, Councillor Belvin, is absolutely we need to be hitting top quartile. So we've been making some really good progress in terms of moving in that right direction. As you can see from some of those data there, we're hitting the median. We want to make sure that we challenge ourselves to continue on that improvement journey and hit top quartile as many of those indicators as we possibly can. So that's, we're challenging ourselves, and I'm sure you'd expect us to say that, and I'm sure our residents will expect us to do that as well. So we'll continue driving that performance going forward. In terms of the right to buy, overall we will lose a significant number of properties over the next 30 years. I think there's a number in the business plan that sets that out, even though we expect the level to reduce now that we've got over that hump. As I mentioned, we'll probably lose about 800 or so over the next 12 to 18 months, and these are the numbers that we've got in the system already that we're working through, and then that should subside. So we're not building fast. We've not been building fast enough to be able to replace some of those properties. But what we will see is a slowdown over that longer term. But overall, I expect the total number to reduce from the 38,000 that we've got now. The flip side of that, of course, is that we'll continue to get some additional revenue coming in there in the service. The one-for-one replacement, finance colleagues might be able to answer that better or not, but that never really did ever allow you to be able to build a brand new property by selling a council property. So if you think about, some of the properties we'll be selling in the range of valued about 80, 90, £100,000. If you took the maximum amount of discounts that people were getting, you'd get, half of that coming in to the council. And you'll know from previous reports that we presented, trying to build a new property in the city, we're looking upwards of 200,000 plus. Clearly the maths don't add up. So what we try and do is we use a range of, a cocktail of funding, if you like. One-for-one replacement contributes towards that. Some of our own resources, any further grant that we might get coming in, will help to contribute towards the construction of those properties. Roofs, yes. Very disappointingly, that contract, it's taken longer than I would have liked for us to be able to get that contract on track. But I am assured that, you know, the team have been working on getting that off the rails now, and we will have a contract in place this year. It's been a long time coming, so we are working hard to make sure that we got that in place, Councillor Hurst, this year. And you mentioned customer engagement. That's a key part of the work that we're doing. The regulator is absolutely keen to make sure that we engage as much as we possibly can with our customers using a whole different mechanisms, and we've got area panels and you know, working directly with customers. We're looking at bringing in mystery shoppers, etc., to be able to shape how the service is delivered, how they can influence policy changes, etc., and we want to be able to provide evidence of that. This is something that the whole sector is needing to improve on, and as I say, the regulator will be looking to ensure that happens. It's one of those key requirements as part of the consumer standard as well. Okay.
Okay, thank you both very much.
Voids?
Target for voids. I was trying to desperately look for the target for voids in the picture. I think if the best in class, 40, no, thank you. 42 is the target for voids, 42 days from end to end. We're not there yet, and we probably won't be there for a while, and largely because we have had a large number of properties that have been in the system for many, many years. And until we clear all of those systems out, the figure won't go down significantly, even though we will be letting those quicker. So once we've cleared those out, we will get towards those numbers. Top quartile performance, you know, would be, I would say, in the mid-20s, 30s for local authorities of this size. So you can see the journey that we need to go to get to there. I mean, we were 100 plus days. We're reducing that, but we've still got quite a lot to do. The main thing, I think, for me is that we get rid of some of those long-term empties and let them as soon as we possibly can, and we improve the process going forward, which Chris and the colleague and teams are working on to make sure that happens. And as I say, that's bringing in additional income, less rent loss, and that's benefit for our residents.
Great, thank you both very much. So, Councillor Smith, Councillor Austin, you wanted to come back. If you could just be brief in your supplementary questions, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Chris. Very straight answer to my question. To paraphrase your answer, it sounded like we're taking a calculated risk on the slippage of environmental standards to save £100,000 a year. And in financially challenging times, things like that face organisations, have we got any, what other measures have we got in place to make sure that our environmental standards don't slip whilst we're taking part in that process? Thank you.
Thanks. Chris, do you want to answer that one specifically, and then I'll come to Councillor Austin?
Can do. Yes. So what we're saying is we should have an internal audit on those practices and procedures to ensure that we don't see any slippage.
Martin, just for the benefit of everyone else, do you want to just say that again?
Sorry. So the difference is we're not getting somebody outside to come in and look at it, but we're doing it ourselves.
That's my understanding. Yeah, there is an audit process.
Right. Thank you. Forgive my misunderstanding. Thank you.
Thank you both. That's helpful. Councillor Austin, please.
Thanks very much. So thank you for clarifying that the 141, the scare quotes are justified, aren't they? Because it's not 1 for 1. It's from the numbers you gave. It's more like 1 for 4. We sell 4 council houses. We might have the money to build one. So that applies to the 800 we're seeing now, or the 800 maybe 2,000. And even after the new discount comes in, it will still be 1 for 4 possibly. So I mean, just a reflection that this is a council stock reduction programme on a strategic level, that our increased programme is binding up one of the 4 wounds where we're losing all our blood and leaving the other 3 to flow. I don't know, Tom, if maybe you should write to the Minister and say, look, we think council housing is an important part of the strategic housing offer in our city for in the years to come, and we need something doing about this. Is that something you might do?
Very happy to have a conversation with ministers, as myself and Councillor Johnson have done so over the last 6 months, where we were making the case that not only did the discount level for right to buy need to be reduced, but that councils needed to be enabled to retain 100% of receipts. Really pleased to say that in the first few months of this government, there were changes on both of those fronts. So we've already seen significant movement from this government to help shore up and secure the future of large stock holding councils like ourselves with HRA accounts. We're continuing to have that ongoing dialogue with the Minister, and in March this year we will be hosting a Future of Council Housing Summit in Sheffield, which will be 1 year on from the first Future of Council Housing Summit, which was hosted by our colleagues at Southwark, and we're hoping that government figures will be able to join us in Sheffield for that event, and we'll make sure people are aware of that in due course. So, you know, already we're in a very positive dialogue with ministers around this, and the changes to the discount level, I think, are significant. We know that in 2012, under the Conservative Liberal Democrat administration, the discount level of right to buy was lifted significantly, which saw more properties being taken out of the council stock. It's now been taken back to levels that we hadn't seen since around 2003, which we think will have a positive increase in the net decrease of right to buy sales. We are also, it's worth saying, investing in our stock increase programme, and you know, I was really pleased to join the groundbreaking of 77 new council homes at Newstead in Burley back in the autumn, an example of the kinds of new 100% council house schemes that we are in the process of building. And so the 5-year stock increase programme runs up to 2029. If we're in a position where we're able to stabilise our HRA account and the new 5-year rent settlement will help us, then we'll be in a position to assess our ability to be able to increase stock going forward from 2029. So all of which is to say, I think we're in a healthy place in our relationship with government, and we are still dealing with the implications of a very damaging public policy that's been now in place since the 1980s and has seen a huge drop in the number of affordable properties in this city. We are now working to increase those numbers, and I'm confident that we've got a government that understands the challenges that we face on that. So thank you all for your comments today. Really helpful conversation. Chris Ajman, thank you for your answers. Let us then turn to the recommendations, and it's worth noting that what we are doing today is recommending that this is sent to the City Council meeting on the 5th of February. Recommendations are that the HRA business plan report for 25-26 and HRA business plan commitments for 25-26 as set out are approved, that the HRA revenue budget 25-26 is approved, that rents for all council dwellings are increased by 2.7% from April, rents for temporary accommodation are increased by 2.7%, garage rents for plots and sites are increased by the same amount, sheltered housing service charge increased by 1.7%, burglar alarm charge 1.7%, and furnished accommodation charge increased by 1.7%. Are members happy to recommend those recommendations for full council consideration in a few weeks? Thank you all very much. Thank you. So, we are now moving on to item number 10. Which is about this council setting out a roadmap to a restored, refurbished and sustainable town hall, and really pleased that we're joined by Tom Smith and Rebecca Nixon for this agenda item. For the benefit of everyone in the room and those who are watching online, perhaps you could just briefly introduce yourselves and then introduce the report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Tom Smith. I'm Director of Customer Experience and Communities.
Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Nixon and I'm an architect and project manager in the Capital Delivery Service.
So thanks everyone. We're sat in Sheffield Town Hall. It's a really special building for the city. Opened in 1897 by Queen Victoria. It's one of only 5 Grade 1 listed buildings in the whole city. Only two Grade 1 listed buildings in the city centre. That puts this building in the top 2.5% of heritage buildings nationally. It's hugely important to this city, not just for democracy and these sorts of things that we do in this building, but it's publicly used. People register births, marriages, deaths, they get married in this building. People protest around this building. It is genuinely part of the heart of the city of Sheffield. Whilst the building has been maintained and it is structurally sound and it is safe, it is clearly showing its age. Not least we know the accessibility, the fabric of the building, some of the mechanical and electrical services, not least the heating system, as members will be aware of today, and some structural issues mean that we are getting to the stage where we need to do something significant in terms of it. Town Hall's been a major capital project alongside Central Library under the accommodation strategy for the council, linked into our financial strategy. And that overall review is aiming to give us a well-maintained, fit-for-purpose and financially sustainable council estate through consolidation of council buildings and a single city centre vision, and the Town Hall is part and parcel of that. A number of pieces of work have taken place to get us to where we are today, the latest of which was in March 2023, where we did a piece of work on essential compliance and maintenance and highlighted the need for probably something like £25 million. We've started to refine that work, and I'll come on to that in a second into where we've got to. There's also been two other studies previously, one in 2018, which is around a brief for the Town Hall and looking at some work, and then further to that, a piece of work in 2022, again, a feasibility study. And both of those pieces of work have contributed to, again, to where we're now at. As I say, the building is safe, but over a number of years, we've had to do a number of localised things to maintain that safety. So again, members will be aware that certain parts of the building cannot be used at the moment. We've actually had to close the top floors of the building in order to make sure that we can use it safely. That means that the building is underutilised. The space isn't used in the way we could use it. We're not getting best value out of this, frankly, amazing building for the city of Sheffield. We've done that high-level assessment in 2023. The initial findings of that estimated the cost from anything between £20 million to do, really basic compliance piece of work, up to something like 50 million to really bring the building up to where we want it to be from a standard perspective. That piece of work needs to be updated, and it also needs to incorporate some more detailed work around what we really want out of this building, the use of it, the accessibility, and really bring it into where we want it to be. So based on all of that, and based on what we currently know, we are looking to bring forward a fully costed option for a one-time cost-effective restoration and maintenance of this building. What that will mean is we'll be appointing a project delivery team to undertake the next stage of design work and some temporary additional resource to make sure that we can move that project forward in a timely way. We'll be looking at our proactive and strategic approaches to building maintenance and making sure we have a proper life cycle model in place for the building so that we don't end up back in a situation where we're not fully maintaining it. We will look at our funding approaches in terms of getting the Town Hall to be well maintained, fit for purpose and financially sustainable, and that funding approach will incorporate a whole range of potential places where we might go for that money. That may not just be the council, that could be external grants and other things. And in doing all of that, we'll be developing and delivering a really comprehensive stakeholder engagement plan to define a shared vision for this building, because we're fully aware that this is not a building for the council, this is a building for the people of Sheffield and needs to be seen as such. We've set out within the report a number of draft visioning principles, which I won't get into detail on, when you can see those under section 2.3, but very much setting out where we want to get to with this building and the work we want to do. So really that was all I was going to say, other than the obvious recommendations at the top of the report that we're asking committee today just to agree to progress to the next step in developing and delivering that restored and sustainable Town Hall, and endorsing those resources that we've asked for, approving the use of £1.2 million that's allocated from the workplace reserve to fund that next stage of design work, approving £300,000 for some external resources and some emergency works that need to take place, and then agreeing that we will come back to this committee with the stage 1 REBA report later this year, and then pending the stage 2 as we move through the process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Tom. That's really helpful. Rebecca, is there anything you wanted to add at this stage before I open it up? No? Okay. Thank you. So, perhaps on behalf of the committee, to save everyone saying it, because I'm sure they will, thank you for your work to get us to this point. It's a hugely detailed and informative report, and a huge amount of work's gone into it. So thank you for getting us to this point on that journey towards the restored and refurbished sustainable town hall. So, a number of colleagues have indicated. I'll start with Councillor Argentia.
Hi, thank you for the report. Yeah, it was very interesting reading. I think people who don't frequent the building as often as we probably do don't realise what a beautiful building it is. And sometimes I have to stop myself and think I'm really privileged to walk in here virtually every day and, you know, having an office here. And there are so many bits of it that are not, even, you know, people who use the building for ceremony, weddings, etc., they don't get to see, you know, how beautiful, for example, the members' library is, although it's hardly used, and, you know, the conference room, etc. There is no denying that a lot of work needs to be done, and we do need to do it because it's such an important building for the city. And how, you know, maybe we need to make more of an effort even as elected members to invite people to the building so that they can take more like an ownership and pride in the building. There's not very many old buildings in the city, partly because they were destroyed during the bombing in the Second World War, but the ones we have we need to cherish. And just yesterday, I went in search of democratic services that moved up in the gods. And it was really difficult to find them because I didn't know where they were. And I have been up there before, and you get to that third level up, and you think that's it. But actually, you can go up another 2 floors. And I have been fortunate enough to see lots of bits that people haven't seen. But I hope one day I can go up to the belfries and have a look at those in person. But yeah, it's really important. But I was also wondering, whilst I was reading this, obviously we've moved quite a few people in here and we're trying to use the space better. What happens to those people whilst we do the work? I'm sure you worked it all out. And also, you know, do people know that we have like industrial kind of kitchens that are fully refurbished and now they're not used anymore, but could we use those? And what's behind that mirror in the big room? Okay. I mean, I know what's there, but do people know what's there? It's beautiful, and it'd be worth, you know, organising for people to see more of it.
Okay, thank you. If anyone has any requests for places of the town hall they want to go to, let's park them for now, and we'll deal with them later. We'll organise a tour for S&R, but let's get through questions. Councillor Miskell, please.
Thank you very much for bringing the report, and I think I do echo many of the comments that Councillor Argencio has talked about. I mean, she did mention, didn't she, about those people who don't frequent the building, which is entirely the point. This place is the heart of democracy in our city, but we do want to open it up to more people in our city. And I think, therefore, it's really important, isn't it, that actually the refurbishment of the town hall that's outlined in this report and the roadmap for getting us there puts citizens front and centre. And I think the work will do with that. You know, we all want to see more tours of this town hall. We all want to make sure that more young people, that more school children are able to visit this place. I would love to see that this place was part of every school curriculum in this city and that every young person was able to come to the heart of democracy of our city as part of their citizenship education and get an experience of it. You know, it's a really, really important building, and therefore I think it's important that this report today gains all of our support. So thank you very much for bringing it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hurst, please.
Thank you. Thank you for this report. I just want to go through what we're being asked to do today, because I understood that what we were doing was approving resource, approving the finance to take us up to REBA stage 2, but you've just said it's going to go to Reba stage 1 and then you're going to come back. And I know there's kind of like many a slip, especially when you're working with a building like this. But will this get us to Reba stage 2? And have we already started talking to partners and putting our ducks in a row, looking at funders for the ongoing refurbishment? And then I also have a kind of another kind of random question that has been sent to me by a member of the group. When we went through the presentation, and we'd seen this the other night when it came to members, I had a question of, can you ask what happened to the radon gas on the leak on the ground floor? Or was that just one of those rumours that got out because it's not in the localised list of emergency works? So I'll hand that over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's take the Reba questions sort of head on so everyone's clear about the process from here, and then there's a few other points and comments you might want to pick up before I'll open it up to any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do the non-technical, then I might expect to technically talk about Reba, but the basic principle is this report does give us the resource to get to Reba stage 2. We thought it was appropriate to bring back the Reba stage 1 to this committee, though, to give an update on the progress to that stage so people can see the direction of travel. But it gets us to Reba stage 2, absolutely.
Are we already talking to partners?
I think that's probably it. This is where the roadmap is important. So I think the straight answer is no, we're not yet. About it, but we are in a broader city context in terms of the city centre and what is happening more broadly in the city centre for investment. So we've not gone to partners and said the town hall, but we are talking to partners about our city centre assets all the time, and colleagues in City Futures are doing that work all the time. What Reba does is get us to a position where we can actually start having those specific conversations, because at the moment we don't have a vision or an offer for the building really we can coherently take out and have that sort of conversation yet. But we are talking about the city with partners all the time as a council. In terms of radon gas, so Sheffield as a place has some places that have radon gas. It comes from granite effectively. So if you ever go to Cornwall, most of Cornwall has a radon gas problem. So it's not a leak. That's the first thing to say. What it is an inherent kind of geological problem that some places have. We have had some radon gas issues in this building. We're dealing with them as part and parcel of the building process, but a lot of that is about ventilation as much as anything else and letting it disperse through the atmosphere. So there's no risk of radon in this building at the moment.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Belbin, followed by Councillor Smith and Councillor Kayoum, please.
Thanks. Yeah, I really want to say I think this paper has already prompted quite a response out of Sheffield, hasn't it, through publicity in the Star, on social media and so on. And reflecting on a lot of the points that have been raised by colleagues already, I just think there's a real opportunity around the engagement around this work to, first of all, open up the town hall to people who may not have visited before and actually show off its properties and so on, and all the things that colleagues have talked about. But also perhaps reflecting on that history of those people who have visited for whatever reasons. And I'm really thinking back to some of the work that's been done quite recently around Cole Brothers, where they really use people's stories and collected stories and so on to really inform the development of the building in some really quite creative ways. So it'd be interesting to hear a little bit more around what planning is around engagement, because it just feels like there's some real opportunities there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Chair. First, the confession, as a former project manager, any report that mentions Reba stages, it's like a nostalgic thrill, so thank you very much for that. We're talking here about a year, or just under a year, to get to Reba 1. So we've got the whole 5 stages. So can you give us a feel for the scale of the whole job in terms of, because I mean it's a biggie. How long are we looking at for the whole thing? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Kayoum, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Smith. Just asked one of the questions about timescales, but obviously a very beautiful building, huge significance for the range of reasons that you outlined earlier on in the report, Tom. For not just for Sheffield, but for the people of Sheffield and its civic life. what I'm interested in is, I know some colleagues have mentioned the people being allowed to visit the building. I'm more interested in actually use of the building, because I think it's so well very underused at the moment. And when I go through the building sometimes, I walk through the building, some of the places are so empty. It's really sad to see those, like the library, for instance, the members' library, some of the other places. They're just crying out to be used. And I'm just wondering what, in terms of, building in, as I say, not just visits, but use by the community. There should be much more activity here, and not just civic activity, but also community activity, public activity, and I don't see any of that. And I'm just wondering if that, is something that's going to be planned into this. I see other civic buildings of the towns, of the cities, much more used by the community and by the public than just, for civic reasons. And also, as I say, as Councillor Smith has alluded to earlier on, I'm just wondering, I know that large-scale projects like this obviously do take a lot of capital, a lot of money, a lot of time. And I'm just wondering, in terms of timescales, I really look forward to this building being alive and buzzing with activity. As I say, not just ourselves, but also by the community, a whole range of different communities and community activities. So if you could put some timescales on, it might be difficult at this stage, but it would be nice to see or to hear what kind of timescales you're looking at. Thanks.
Thank you all very much. So Tom, Rebecca, let me hand back on those points. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll take the second to last point about usage first, and then I'll hand over to Rebecca to talk maybe about the timescales and the more the REBA stuff. So I think, right at the heart of the piece of work we need to do about visioning for this building and the use of this building is that use bit, is how do we get this building being fully utilised and what for? And the what for is an important question, actually. As it stands, our big focus is making sure this building is fulfills its democratic function and fits in terms of the council's overall property holding. The big elephant in the room here clearly is where is the money coming from? And that might require ultimately for us to reduce other buildings that the council's currently using in order to get best usage out of this building from a council perspective, or to find some other way of funding it. But we need to come to that decision. And within that visioning piece of work, we expect, as you said, Councillor Cowan, that we will be talking about potentially more community use, potentially more public space use. But we need to see that alongside whatever use the council needs for it in its overall kind of property holdings. So we're kind of aware we need to do that rounded piece of work going forward around the visioning. So I don't have a specific answer on that, but we will be taking that into account as we move forward the piece of work in terms of the best use of the space. I don't know whether Becky wanted to talk a bit around the engagement process and maybe around the REBA timescales.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Thank you for all your questions. I'm going to try and hit a few points. I've got lots of pieces of paper in front of me. But yeah, just building, I think, in terms of the use of the building, that original 20 to 50 million estimate that we talked about was refurbishing the building as is. And what we're looking at now is really building on that key piece of design work that was done, but thinking about future use. How can this building stand for the next 100 years so that it is brimming with activity? At the moment, we know we have, all of us occupying the building and using the building. We know we have weddings, citizenship ceremonies, different events, but we know that it's underutilised and we know that we can get more out of the building, and we really need to focus on that. And that's where the engagement will be really key, actually, coming into Councillor Belbin's question. We need to make sure that the engagement is really wide-reaching in terms of the stakeholders. It should be touching upon the heritage and the key heritage stewards within the city, and thinking about, so if we talk about heritage, it might be, okay, which are the bits that we're saving and restoring, what bits are hidden that we want to reveal, how might the public access that heritage and the cultural stories. It's a piece of our city, and as you said before, Councillor Argencio, we don't have a lot of heritage buildings in the city due to the war, so we need to make sure that it's accessible to the city. It's about a piece of architecture, going to have a rant about architecture now, but that joins together cultures, so it is really important. So the engagement piece, we're already thinking about different methods, and I know on coal buildings, the architects were really key in pulling together kind of a stakeholder event where they had boards and presentations, and we're already kind of getting our ducks in a row in terms of thinking about who that architect is, what their experience is, and how the design team comes together to really get the most out of that stakeholder engagement, so that when we come back to you with the REBA Stage 1 report, which is looking at feasibility options, we really have, already a lot of input from the city about how this building will be used for the future. In terms of timescales, lovely question, thank you, Councillor Smith. All that we can do at the moment is look towards precedent. So we can look towards other town hall restorations across the country. As an absolute guess, based on those precedents, perhaps the design might take 2.5, 3 years, and perhaps the construction 3.5 years. But again, it depends on the scope of the works, what we're planning to do. And when we come back to you at the end of REBA Stage 1, obviously that will become clearer. And as we go through the design process, the timescales, the total cost of the works, and also what we're planning to do will become clearer with every stage. So I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I think it's really helpful to get people's reflections today. As Councillor Miskell said, this is the People's Town Hall, and I'm really heartened about the way in which we're going to be seeking to build in the people of the city's stories over the coming weeks, months and years ahead, because I think we want to capture what are people's memories, what are their experiences of using this building, what would they like to do and see here, and also always remember that many people have not been inside this building. 2 years ago, I brought a Tenants and Residents Association from Walkley Ward here to have a visit, to go and see the Lord Mayor at the time. And for many people who'd lived in the city for years and years and years, they'd never been inside the building and were blown away by it. So we should always kind of remember that there's lots of people who have walked past it countless times and will have an image of what they think happens in here, but perhaps haven't ever been inside. And that is from old age through to very early years. My 3-year-old nephew doesn't know what I do, but he thinks I work in a palace. And he will have an image of this building that is, fairly accurate. I kind of get that. But then through to yesterday, when I was filming a short clip outside the front of the town hall and came inside the foyer, and there were people who'd come in to have their photo taken next to the Chinese Lunar New Year dragon that's up the staircase. A really good way of how we're making the building accessible and available for people to come and celebrate their culture, their traditions. It is the People's Town Hall, and I think if we hold on to that thought as we take this through, then I think we'll come to good outcomes at the end of it. So really hope that this has been a helpful conversation for the team and for members. There is a tantalising book doing around somewhere with old photos that I'd quite like to have a look at in a minute. And so let's turn to the recommendations, recognising that this is part 1 of a conversation we'll have at this committee before it comes back to us later in the year. Tom helpfully read them out earlier on, but essentially we're agreeing to progress to the next step of developing and delivering a restored and sustainable town hall, approving the use of 1.2 million from the Workplace Reserve to fund the next stage of design work and surveys, and then approving the use of a further £300,000 to fund additional resource to help to move that project forward, and that we agree to receive a further report at the completion of REBA Stage 1 in autumn, winter 2025. Members happy to support those recommendations? Brilliant. Great, thank you very much. And that, colleagues, is the conclusion of today's business. So 2 significant items today, HRA and the Town Hall. Our next meeting is in February, and I look forward to seeing you all then. Thank you.